Look at this.
Let me see.
Look at this video yesterday. So on Fridays, like this new neighborhood that I'm in, um, all the kids like there's like a cookout on Friday, so all the kids just play. This was in my garage yesterday. Every kid in the neighborhood all taking
What's that
turns to
called,
get
Doug?
into the cold tub. They all went in the cold tub. Dead serious. They're all like in love with it. So I'm like, all right, like anytime you want, get my number, just text me you're coming. You can use the cold tub whenever you want. So they're all like, we're coming tomorrow morning. We're coming tomorrow morning. So I set it up in the backyard and I take like Collins's toy buckets. They're like silicone. I fill them up with water, put them in the freezer. And then once you put them in the cold tub, you can just push out a massive block of ice. So I get two giant blocks of ice in there. Water's sitting around 44 degrees. It's a little hot for my liking, but 44 degrees that'll wake you up.
No, that's good. 44 is good. That's actually crazy. But you can buy, I mean, if that's working, it works good, but you can buy those ones that are made for making bricks of ice.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like on Amazon, like you just like they make those little square ones. They make like big ones that are like a brick. So you fill it up, you put it in your freezer, and you have a brick of ice you put in a cold tub.
Yeah,
That's
that's
kind of the
it's
same thing
it's
you're doing.
essentially what it is. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
pink and blue little buckets.
I can't believe the kids got in and like did a 3 minute one.
Dude, they're in there. They're 3 minutes. Like they're panicking. Their shoulders are tense. They're like hyperventilating, and like I'm just trying to guide them by saying, all you have to do is focus on your breath. Just breathe. Then they like slow their breath down. Then they're like, oh, my feet are numb. And it's like my body's numb. Like this isn't even bad. This isn't even bad. Like they're all bragging to each other that they can do it. And then at the end, they all plunge their head in. They all dunk.
That's actually amazing. And for them, it's probably so much easier because they're so little.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Well, actually, the seventh graders, there's two of them that are bigger than me.
yeah, now that I think about it. Oh, Cameron Gaunce is here.
That's my man.
Gentlemen.
There he
There he is.
is,
Nice lid.
rocking the BuzzPod hat.
Oh,
Gauncer,
that's what I didn't even realize that was this hat. I just wear it all the time. So
Gauncer, this is my boy Nico.
What's up, man? Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too.
Virtually meet you.
Beauty. Look at us three. I'm going to start with a little intro, and then we're
Okay,
going to go from there.
perfect.
Joining us today is a second round pick to the Avalanche, a Calder Cup champion, a man with almost 1,000 games professional, an Stanley Cup champion that we will get to, but is not on your elite prospects. But most importantly, a new dad to Ruby. Cameron Gaunce, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me, guys.
What's going on? What's going on? What have you been up to these days since the season ended? I know you just had Ruby, so I'm assuming a lot of that.
Yeah, it's been being a dad over the last couple weeks, and it's been amazing. Um, I've been basically a dad since I was 16. I just didn't have a kid. So the fact that it's now come has been something I've always wanted. It's been even better than I could have hoped for. It's also more all encompassing than I imagined. You
Yeah.
can get warned all you want, and you can have the expectations in your head as to what being a father and fatherhood is going to be like. But until you get there, it's a lot different, and it's been amazing. So that's been my postseason thus far.
Nice. What have you found to be like the hardest thing to do with Ruby?
Ooh. I think the hardest thing initially, I made a joke about it in our group chat, was burping. I don't know why but like post feed, you just see them, you see her, pardon me, um, get uncomfortable. And all you want to do is help. But I'm trying all the different, I've seen every YouTube clip, I've listened to every person who's got their own way to do it, own method of doing it. And I found like just knowing that she's uncomfortable. And when you're in these first few weeks, essentially, you've got these 2.5 to 3.5 hour windows of where they're supposed to be feeding and then time off and feeding. So if she's fussy because she's got a burp for 30 to 40 minutes, now all of a sudden there's only about an hour and a half left before she needs to feed again. So in that time, then you need to make sure you change her, You need to make sure that she's got all the other things, good sleep, so she's not too stimulated, all these things. And because I wasn't getting past that first step of burping, I found that was the kind of toughest part. But getting better as it's gone on. She's getting more comfortable, I think, with me, which is the more
Yeah.
appropriate thing. And it's been wonderful.
Yeah. Once you find that technique, you'll have them burping no problem.
Yeah, I mean, and
Since it,
the burping Z, like you only have to burp them for what, the first couple months.
Oh, I'm hoping.
Yeah,
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 and then they burp themselves
it came and left quick for me, I thought. The
until
burping.
they can like hold their neck up.
Okay,
You
Mm.
yeah,
just have to burp them.
Unfortunately, she's got a Gaunce head though, so that could be a bit longer
It's a little heavy, eh?
yeah.
Since it's pretty fresh with you, are there any differences you notice playing with a kid and without having a kid besides the food?
It's a good question. I think for me, I found just my time at the rink was different because what I want to be doing most is being with Ruby and Andrea. And if I'm being taken away from that, I want to make my time worth it, and I want to make whatever I'm doing um, an endeavor that is going to make me feel like, okay, it was worth being away from them. So every time I was at the rink, I've always been someone that's pretty internally motivated, but the idea of being away from them and being at the rink for what is the job and for, I want to make sure every time I'm there, I'm getting everything I possibly can out of it. Every game, I have that much more intent to every game of making sure it's the best I can possibly do, the most I can possibly do. So when I leave the rink, I can tell myself that, hey, you were away from Ruby, but it was for a good purpose and you did everything you could to make it as productive as possible.
100%. That is the
Mhm.
exact way you look at it. You're like, my girls are at home right now. I need to go out and be efficient as possible.
Mhm.
Um, that's great to hear. Both are doing well, I assume.
Yeah, yeah,
Vacation
they're
coming
doing
up.
great. They're doing great. Andrea's a natural mother. She's been amazing. I'm essentially just a supporting cast. Not even that. I'm more of an extra in her play right now. She's doing such a great job with Ruby, and she's doing very well, improving every day. And Ruby is a rock star. She's been meeting a few more people lately, and she's quite the politician. She's around them, and she's all just
Oh
goo
yeah.
goo gaga, bright big eyes, and then right when they leave, it's back to normal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now Collins is quite the politician. Just wait till Ruby gets a little older. She goes to Nana and Papa whenever mom and dad say no.
Hey,
Dad, can
listen,
I get
I've
a
met Collins. Collins is definitely the smartest solo I've met, so I get it.
what a
No
shot at
doubt.
Sydney.
No,
That wasn't intentional.
no doubt. But I think what you said about being a supporting cast, I mean, I think we can all like attest. I guess as hockey players, that's kind of how it goes, is you got to have a rock star wife.
Mhm,
Yeah, you got to know your role on the team and in the family.
100%.
Um, that's great to hear. How's your body feeling? I know you got banged up at the end of the season. How's the
mhm.
wing doing?
Shoulder's doing pretty well. So this is my third time separating the same shoulder. It seems to happen once a decade. 04, 2014, and then 2024. I've had the same. So
Yeah.
hopefully I'm not still playing by 2044, or else I have to get a whole new shoulder. But no, it's doing pretty well. It's progressed the faster than anticipated, especially for someone 34, which it's kind of bittersweet because it's great that but then it makes me think like, had we just won a couple more games, I would have been able to get back and play. But no, it's progressing well. I've been going in and getting treatment. That's one of the added benefits of living in the city that you play for is I can continue to just go to get treatment at the rink. I don't have to seek treatment and then rehab elsewhere. I can just get it all done in the same spot. So that's been so nice and convenient for me.
That's very convenient. Have you been seeing James, Mr. James Ho?
Yes, I saw James Ho for the first week before I could go see Jordan back at the rink. I saw James Ho. He was awesome as usual.
Sharp, sharp.
Oh yeah, Gauncer gave me the good food recommendations as usual.
Yeah,
Talking
where'd
about
he send you?
cars, everything else he's got going on. But no, I think that's the other thing was I started seeing him when I first started my rehab, and he just put me on a great start.
Yeah,
Great starting path, and then I've been kind of cruising since.
cool.
Have you been spending all your summers in Toronto?
Yeah, so we're from here. My wife and I are both from here. I'm from a bit further north called Markham, and we have lived in the place we're in right now since 2015. It's just in Etobicoke, and so my summers have all been here. So the fact that I've been able to do all this season in the same location has been amazing.
Have you noticed that your elite prospects says that you're from Sudbury?
Yeah, so I was born in Sudbury. That's the thing.
Okay.
Born in Sudbury until I was 4. Then my brother was born, and my parents decided, okay, now we have to move because the golden child's here. So then we moved. Then we moved to Markham, and I've been in
Gotcha.
Markham ever since I was 4.
Gotcha. So talk about growing up in Markham playing for the Waxers and a couple cool teammates I noticed on that
Is
team.
is the
Yeah,
Waxers real quick? Is the Waxers are they orange? I mean, I saw some of your jerseys. They were like
mhm.
kind of like the Toronto Maple Leaf jerseys a little bit.
Yeah,
But there was a team in Markham, like I played in the GTHL that had like orange on them, or was that the
yeah.
same
So
organization?
when I looked at your elite prospect, I saw you did play for the Toronto Red Wings,
Yeah,
um,
Good for
and I saw.
everybody.
yeah, I played for
Kid,
everyone.
listen. I get it. GTHL kid not know much about everywhere else. I get it. All there is a GTHL. Everything else is just fodder. No, the team you're thinking about is also Markham, but it's Markham Islanders. That's what they used to
Mm,
be called. Then I think they then turned to Toronto Titans. But yeah, there's a Markham Islanders team that uses those colors, whereas the Waxers are the same as same as the Leafs, blue and white. But to your initial question, Zach, it was amazing. I played for the Waxers from start to finish. My dad was the manager, so that's why I was able to stay on the team the whole time.
nice.
But we had like very, very, very good teams right from the start. We were one of those kind of serendipitous in the sense that we all grew up in the same area too, whether it be again my teammates Steven Stamkos, Michael Del Zotto, Cody Hodgson, all first round picks into the NHL, and then I had a number of players. I think in our U16 is what it's called now in Ontario. But our minor midget year, we had I think 14 or 15 of our players either played professional or got their schooling paid for, one way or another. So we had an amazing team. Our coach also was a man by the name of Paul Titanic. He was the head coach of University of Toronto um, when they won a national championship, and he also coached with Mike Keenan. So he was actually he's been and oh pardon me, and he was the captain of Bowling Green University when
Nice.
he played. So we got again, he was someone who was offered multiple NHL jobs and he turned them down because he wanted to stay at home and be with his family. And that was our coach all the way up, someone who could have been an NHL coach. We've got that guy as a coach. We've
Mm,
got all these players who are from Markham and played here the entire way up. And it was just a great experience. I'm still friends with so many of them to this date. Winning was tons of fun. Being hated as a young kid it was weird because all these teams hated us. We haven't even met most of the teams that hate us just because we were so good. And this is something I can say now because like this isn't unbiased. We were very, very good team. And going into tournaments with teams hating us or some of the people in the GTHL hating us just because we're winning all the time it was different to experience at a young age because I had someone who had a very loving family. Um, but it was interesting. It was something to definitely experience at a young age, and I loved every second of minor hockey.
yeah, I mean, I would too when you're waxing everybody. I have written down that's like the coolest name. Like, yeah, I
Yeah,
play for the Waxers. Like, probably wax you. Um,
exactly. It was a verb too with us. So
and so you had great years with the Waxers. Then you get drafted into the OHL. The Mississauga St. Michael's Majors are not a team anymore. They are now the Rebels, right?
no, they're now the Mississauga
Steelheads.
Steelheads. Yeah,
Steelheads. Who's the Rebels? Where's that come from?
Rebels is a GTHL team.
Okay. Yep. Is that
What,
Mississauga Rebels?
Yeah, yeah.
I played against them then growing up. That's why I
There you
remember.
go.
I have a quick question in this question is was that a school as well? Like when because
Yes.
St. Mike's in Ontario was a school, and I heard about them having an OHL team and the guys all going to school together. And I was like,
Mhm.
first of all, I didn't even know the OHL guys were going to school. And second of all, I didn't know they had like an OHL team that was affiliated with a school. I find that to be so like interesting, kind of ironic too, like the OHL
Yeah.
having a school.
Yeah. Quite the educational reputation the OHL has. They didn't go to school. But yes, you're right. There is a high school, or pardon me, I think it's 5 to 12, private school called St. Michael's College. And from 96 to 2007, I believe, there was the OHL team called the St. Michael's Majors that was played out of that same rink. They were affiliated with the school, and they all went to the school and played at the St. Michael's Arena, because that's when Eugene Melnick owned the team. And Eugene Melnick is a big alumni for St. Michael's College. So he wanted them to be affiliated. But then when the year after I was drafted, so I didn't play my first year. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to school or not. So the year after I was drafted, Eugene Melnick then moved them out of downtown Toronto to Mississauga, in which they were then called the Mississauga St. Michael's Majors, because he wanted to keep the affiliation until he sold the team. So yes, there was their affiliation, but once they moved and Eugene Melnick sold the team, there was no longer that affiliation.
Okay,
Cool.
they just kept the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any interest in going to school? Were you talking to college?
Yes. Yeah, I was a school guy almost the whole way. Education was very important in my family. It still is. I'm still taking courses to this day, but it always was very important. So that was kind of always the mindset I thought, because I was never, when you're the fourth, probably some years fifth or sixth best player in your minor hockey team, your thought isn't you're going to the NHL. Like, yeah, you can dream about it, but when you've got these other players on your team and you're a relatively realistic kid with a very realistic father, you're not assuming NHL is a thing. So I just wanted to get as far as I could in hockey because I loved it. And school was kind of where I thought. So I actually even had the school kind of set before deciding that summer. Like, I thought I was going to Harvard, had it all kind of set up that was what was going to happen. But then when they moved, St. Mike's moved out of downtown, and they got a new head coach who had just come from pro hockey. His name was Dave Cameron. Things just kind of changed that summer. Meeting with Dave, understanding what he thought about for my career and what could happen. Because the other thing that happens is when you're in the Ontario Hockey League, you get what's called a schoolboy package. And what happens is, I sound like I work for the league, but for every year you play in the OHL, you accumulate a certain amount of money towards your schooling of choice. So I played 3 years in the OHL, which means I accumulated 3 years, whatever my contract was worth, if you want to call it that, 3 years worth of that much money to go towards a school. And then there's certain schools in Canada that will then give you a bit of a grant if you go play hockey there. So on top of the money you've accumulated in the OHL, that total, that pool of money, then the schools might give you a bit of a break as well. And then I could just continue to play hockey while getting my degree in Canada. So that was kind of my thought process. But yeah, it was between basically Harvard or there. And I just chose to go there because at the time I thought that was going to give me the best opportunity to play pro hockey.
Yeah, cool. Is that when you knew you could make a career? Like, when did you know you're like, I could play in the NHL. I could play for a long time.
I think I thought I could make a career of it was during my first year in the OHL. When I started to see that I could excel at that level. Even at that point, I didn't think it was, even after I was drafted. I was lucky enough, like you said, to get drafted in the second round. Even at that point, it wasn't like, because of how my parents kind of molded me, I didn't even think it was a guarantee that it was like, yeah, it's another step and there's still a lot I have to do. I've still got a lot of improvements to make. But I think it was during that first year that I thought, you know what, this is something I could legitimately make a career of. And I need to really focus on doing everything I can if this is what I want to do.
You think that mindset is something that has helped you, I mean, be successful for such a long time? You're a 14-year pro, almost 1,000 games played pro. And it seems like you've had this mindset since you were a kid where the opposite of a lot of guys would get drafted in the second round and think like, I've made it, and then kind of start to go downhill because they think I've made it. Where you kind of have this opposite mindset of, I haven't done shit. And this not that it means nothing, but it's just a small step in the right direction, and I have to keep doing what I'm doing. And is that something that you attribute like a lot of your success to, is just that mindset of, you know, you want to continue to improve and continue to get better, and you haven't made it, you know, ever really?
Yeah, no, and I think you're right. I think that's definitely part of it. The idea, because again, like I said, when I was drafted the second round, three of my kids I grew up with were drafted in the first round. So like even that, like yeah, I was second round pick, but like it's not. I still have this idea. It's not, my accomplishments aren't that great because like look at what these guys have done, and I'm so happy for them and proud of them. Like look at how great they're doing. So my mentality has always been like, yeah, but there's other guys doing better. Like I talk about like my brother being the favorite, like jokingly, but like first round pick to the NHL, first round pick to the OHL. My niece and nephews are now doing track and field at school. My brother was winning track and field 2 years up when he was in grade two. He was running the 100, the 400. Like he was someone who was a gifted athlete. I'm a good athlete. Yeah, I'll take that, but I'm nothing compared to what my brother is or what my friends are. And so this idea that I need to always continue to work and keep getting better, yeah, has been something that's always been part of me. And I probably always will be part of me, that I'm not special. So I need to work harder than these other guys do.
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Classic.
Look at you waxing poetically today.
The
Class.
classic.
I think you start getting your reps in the track in the morning before Ruby wakes up, and then you hit your brother up at the end of off season and get him on the track and just show him that hard work beats talent, maybe.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So your last year in Mississauga, you make the All-Star game. How
Mhm.
was that experience? How was that season before you eventually sign with Colorado and play pro?
So the OHL used to have an All-Star game. It no longer has it, unfortunately. But
I
I
don't want
was
to hurt
lucky
anyone's
enough.
feelings, eh?
That could be part of it. That could very well be part of it. Um, the so I was lucky to be part of it for 2 years there, and it was awesome. Like getting to you. Well, again, I'm not quite as tenacious as you are on the ice. I'll put it that way.
You are. You're close.
Oh,
You're there.
close, close. I appreciate that. Close. But usually team opponents don't love me. So getting to meet guys the first couple days, the first like couple instances are always so weird because
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
just finished making fun of them or finished telling them how awful they were or something. I've tried to find something
Yeah.
that's going to make them think more than they need to think. Each player, obviously, as you know, is different. So I've done that for years. Now all of a sudden I'm playing with them in these events where everyone's trying to be nice, everyone's trying to pretend like they don't hate each other. And it was a blast, especially the second year I did it, because I had four of my teammates with me. So we got to all experience it together. And it was so fun. Getting to meet these guys, I did hardest shot for the first time. That was fun. I didn't win, obviously, because you've seen me shoot, but I still got to do it.
What was your shot back then? Do
I
you
think
remember?
in junior it was, so I did one in junior. I think I got to 95.4, but then when I did it in the AHL, I only went up a little. I only went up like I think I got 96.7. And that was like after 10 years of continuing to shoot and work out. But nonetheless, it was again, that was something that was so cool. Getting to wear that like all-star jersey. I know it might not seem like much, but still putting on a shirt that said all-star in the front of it was really cool because we all play this game for the logo on the front, but at the same time you represent your family on the back. And the idea that on the front of my jersey says all-star and yet my family's name is on the back of it, like my dad's name, my mom's, like all these people get to have that attributed to them, was something that was really cool for me.
Yeah, that is really cool. It's a testament to the hard work you've put in and the hard work that they've put in because you don't get
Mm-hmm.
there by yourself. Everybody knows that. So that is a cool moment. Lucky you were able to share that with your family.
Because the OHL, when you started to kind of because you said you weren't as tenacious as Z, but I was looking you up, man. You got some great tilts on your fight card, and you do mix it up quite often. Honestly, it's impressive because all your tilts seem to be one of your teammates getting blown up, and you're just going to have his back, but it's like, dude, you gotta tell your teammates to keep their heads up, because here's just how many of your teammates have gotten just blown up because every single one of your fights, someone gets absolutely blown up before you go at this guy. But is the OHL kind of where you started to add that to your game?
Yeah, 100%. Minor hockey, that was always like the guys were always acting like the fake tough guys, right? And I was that on my team. Because again, with the players we had, I had to find a role, figure out where I'm going to fit in. And that was kind of me. So then once I got to junior hockey and fighting was allowed, it was something that I always kind of wanted to try because I might have been in a few off the ice. So the idea of getting in some on the ice when it's allowed seemed like a good idea. And my first year, I remember because that's when fighting was still very, very prevalent. And being a now it's I saw the other day 6'1", 200 pounds now average in the NHL, but that was bigger in the OHL at the time. So being a bigger defenseman who talked a lot of crap, knew I had to do it. And the first couple, like for the first even OHL, first couple of years in pro, it was just kind of a bit freeing would be a word, a bit cathartic, where just kind of let that out until the first time I got my face shattered when I got my nose, when my nose was facing due east and I was going due west. Then all of a sudden, I had to learn about a few more grabs and a few different ways to do things. But no, the OHL was the first time that was allowed in my game, and I think it helped my game because through the NHL process, they talk to you about that type of stuff. Like, what do you bring to the table? Like, we've seen you bring toughness, which is never something that I really thought about, which is something I did, but you add toughness where other guys don't. And back then, toughness was fighting. Like if you had over 5 or 6 fights a year, you were considered tough. Like yes, there was tougher guys, of course. So that was something that helped my game, helped my process, and something I will probably miss when my career is over. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome, dude. Which one was the one that shattered your nose? If you don't mind
So
me asking.
no, absolutely, you'd gladly look it up too, because I didn't fall either, and I kept fighting. But
My man.
I fought this guy named Ian Schultz. He was playing for Hamilton Bulldogs, again, no longer in AHL team. I'm old. And he was at the time, he was a bit bigger than me, but at the time he was a bit of a tough guy. And he was running, my defense partner was Tyson Berry that season. And he ran Tyson a few times. So I told him, like, you do that again, we're fighting. Praying he doesn't do it, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have to back up my talk on that one. So game's almost over. We score an empty netter to go up 3-1, and he takes a run on the empty net. So I look at my bench and I say, like, can I go? Because it's 3-1. I don't want my coach there. I hear go, go. I said, let's do this. So we line up, we start going. I'm doing okay in the fight. You'll see I'm doing okay at the start, but then he kind of kneels down a bit. And I think I've got him. And this is when again I should be backing off, but instead I try to like finish the fight and keep going. He comes from last Tuesday and just bang right across my face, hits me. My nose again just goes the complete opposite way. You see me kind of shake my head. I go to throw another punch, and he goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, we're done, dude. You're leaking." And my nose is just a faucet is turned on. So I go to the dressing room afterwards, and as I'm getting my nose put back in place, the coach walks in and goes, "Gauncer, what the heck were you doing?" Like, you said go. He said no. I said no. There's no point, there's no point in fighting this guy, and he's gonna beat you. So, oh, okay, my bad. So I broke my nose for no reason.
Oh my God, that's actually hilarious.
Yeah.
I've had 3 different instances in my career where I heard go, where the coach later told me he was saying no. So I completely understand that. I think you're just wanting to hear go. I don't know.
I,
Yeah.
you know what? I think that's all it was. And
Yeah.
I was hoping he was going to make me change. Like, just take me off so I don't have to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you hear the saying, seeing red, you guys are hearing red.
Yeah, exactly.
Just go. Um, that's hilarious. Talk about the transition from OHL and signing your first pro contract. Did you go right to Colorado or did you go to Lake Erie and then later on get called up?
Later on, got called up. My first year, I ended up getting called up. But
Cool.
the transition was tough because and I think it was something that I struggled a bit with throughout my career was in the OHL, I was a do-it-all defenseman, like played power play, penalty kill, start a game, end a game, whether we were up, whether we were down. And when I got to pro, I had to realize that I'm not the skilled defenseman in pro hockey. I'm not going to be the power play guy. Later on in my AHL career, I was, but started my career, I was not a power play guy. So my transition was learning how to play defense again because I had to learn the type of game I had to play. Um, that was probably the biggest transition for me was learning that I need to do a certain thing. Again, my skating was something I've always and continued to work on. So learning that it's going to be a faster game. How are you going to play with that new mentality? If I need to be a more defensive minded player. The toughness part was something that was always part of my game. Like my first year pro was when I had the most fights in my career. I think I had 7 in the AHL and 3 in the NHL that year, or something along those lines. So that was something that was part of it. Facing guys that were much stronger than me was new. Guys on my team were like when I say I had 7 and 3, so that's 10. I was like 4th on my team in fights that year. So it was just normal back then to fight that much. So knowing that that was going on in the game was also a transition I had to make. But no, the biggest transition for me was learning that I had to be a different type of player, and understanding the type of game I had to play and fitting in to the team and the organization's need.
Mm-hmm.
And is that something like when you're talking to teams, right? Because you're a 14-year pro. I listened to some of your exit interviews about like talking with organizations and stuff like that. How hard is it to find a fit in minor pro hockey where your role is always going to be, I don't know how to put this, like valued?
I completely understand what you're saying. First of all, I appreciate the due diligence both of you are doing, watching my exit interviews, doing all like great job. Okay. Next. Like you said, the flux within an AHL team is crazy year to year because whether it's new guys coming in, young players that have just been signed, old players aging out, organizations deciding to send new players down, you could have a whole different team halfway through the year, let alone the next season. So in terms of me trying to find a fit, I never really, because my game, I'm not really specialized in any one fashion. Like there's jack of all trades, master of none would be the best way to put it. Um, that was never something I had the luxury of kind of doing. I had to figure out where my role was going to be once I got there. Because like you talked about, trying to find your value, finding relevance in pro hockey is hard sometimes because you want to feel like you're a relevant, not only part of the team, but part of the organization. And figuring that out each year has been different, unfortunately. I've been the same person off the ice. I think that's been a key for me is knowing who I am, having some self-awareness, understanding how I fit into a group, being who I am. But on the ice, sometimes it's different. Like if you looked at, like you said, you guys have looked at my elite prospects and you see in Syracuse, I'm putting up tons of points because I'm playing first power play there. Whereas when I was in Texas and I was playing, or like this season, in Toronto, I'm more of a defensive role or more of a not mentoring, but playing with a younger player type role. It's I'm going to have a whole different game, and this is something I needed to figure out year after year. What was the best way I could help our team win? Because in the end, the way I play, my success is kind of predicated off team success. So figuring out my role was how can I best help our team win on a night-to-night basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's thank you for answering that question because I couldn't even spit out the actual question, but that was a great answer.
Well,
Thank you.
it's super valuable for a coach to be able to know that he can use a guy on his power play, on his penalty kill, with his bottom pair, and his top pair. So that's a tribute to you and the jack of all trades, master of none. Maybe this
That's
is
kind of hey, that's like Z-Man this year. I would watch your guys' games and sometimes he'd be on like top 6 and I'd see him, one goal, one apple, nice. And then I tune into the next game. He's on the 4th line. I see someone like clip the goalie, this giant guy, and then I just see Z jump him from behind and just start feeding him. And I'm just like, wow, this guy's a jack of all trades. This guy.
Zach of
Hey
all
Zach,
trades.
what did I say to you the first week? I hadn't even played a game yet when I signed, and first week after the GR game at home. Do you
Yep.
remember what I said to you, Zach?
Yeah, you're like, hey man, like I just met you. I just wanted to let you know that your game travels really well. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, like I appreciate that. You asked me, like, you know what I mean by that? I'm like, kinda, like, you know, and you explained, you
Yeah.
really could just fit in anywhere in any organization. Like the way you play, there's always kind of a
Mhm.
need for it, and I appreciate that, and I ain't changing. So
No, exactly. Like the idea of, first of all, you remembered it almost verbatim. And I talk a lot, so
stuck
that's
with me,
impressive that you were able to
stuck with me.
remember that.
Yeah.
But no, the idea that like Zach's game travels very well, it can fit in anywhere. It's kind of like I heard that expression from golf. Like when you watch major tournaments, they say, "Oh, this guy's going to do great here because his game travels," which basically means he hits the ball well. He doesn't have much curve to his shot, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So for Zach, it doesn't matter the team he's on. Every team wants a guy who's going to bring energy every night. Every team's going to want a guy whose teammates love. Everyone's going to want a player who's going to understand what their strengths are in their game, which is for Zach, forecheck, which is protecting the puck, which is understanding his spot on the in the D zone, which is a weird thing to say. It sounds a bit simple, but understanding where you are in your D zone, so then when you get the puck, when you're defending, what to do next. All these things Zach does on top of his unbelievable hand-eye coordination. Sometimes in practice, too good to the sense where I'd shoot a puck from the point, he'd stop it instead of tipping it. So then he would just stop and make a play, so my shot looks even weaker.
Yeah.
That's a forward in front just stops the play. But nonetheless, something like that, Zach is exactly what I'm talking about when I say you need to figure out where you fit in, get in where you fit in, and Zach does an unbelievable job of doing that.
I appreciate it, Cam. This podcast is supposed to be about you.
No,
Appreciate your
no,
kind
no,
words.
no. They're not tuning in for me. They're tuning in to listen to you two. Talk to somebody else.
That's
No,
hilarious.
no, no. But that's a really. I'm gonna steal that one. Your game travels well. I like that a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's good. Your fighting travels well, Nico. You can fight anyone.
Exactly.
Oh man, who's the toughest guy you fought in your opinion? And what would you say is, I guess other than the shattered face might be the answer to this, but what would you say is the fight that after you were like, damn, that was tough.
So that I think both are going to be the same answer. Uh, yeah. So the toughest guy I fought was either Cody Bass. I fought him twice. And then, oh my gosh, there's one other guy. He's a first round pick of Montreal. He plays for Nashville right now. Big right hand shot.
Michael McCarron.
Karen,
That guy.
That's who I jumped.
that's who
That's who
that's who
Nico was
Zach
telling
jumped.
about.
Yeah, that's who
Yeah. So
Zach.
I fought him too, and he was a big dude. But
I
no, I think
saw
it was
that
Cody
one.
Bass.
I saw that
Yeah.
one. You did well on that one, but he
Yeah.
turned you and you were like kind of facing the other way. It was weird.
Yeah. So the one against McCarron, I just wanted to the thing I thought I had over him was cardio. So I just wanted to fight to last as long as possible. Because the reason why I fought him was earlier in the year, he got suspended for a hit he laid on my brother.
Oh,
He had an interference that was claimed to be unintentional, but bracing for a guy doesn't seem unintentional to me. And my brother got pretty hurt from it. So the next time I played him, I just kind of didn't give him an opportunity. Like I gave him a chance to drop his glove, but we were fighting.
you're
But
protecting
then
the
when I grabbed
golden
onto
child.
him,
You're protecting the
yes,
golden child of the
exactly,
family.
exactly.
Your dad would have disowned you if you didn't do it, maybe.
100%. So when I grabbed onto him, I realized just how big he was and strong that McCarron is. But no, the Cody Bass fight, I fought him twice. The first time I fought him, we were in a playoff series, I believe, or we were going to play them in the playoffs. I forget which one it was. And he was running around acting, and we didn't have any tough guys my second year in Texas. So I thought, you know what, let's do this. And he starts screaming right when I say let's go. We're not this fight hasn't even started. He starts screaming at me. So we line up for the face off, and he's like raring to go. And we drop the gloves, and I don't even want you to watch the foot. You can watch it, obviously. I look like such a moron before the fight because I have my hands going back and forth for some reason because I see him do it. So I start going like this before the fight for some reason, like I'm shuffling. I don't know why. So then we grab on, and instantly he switches hands. And as he switches hands, I get caught up. And then I try to bring my head underneath his arm. And
Right.
as I do that, my head gets stuck in my jersey. And he just starts feeding me with left hands. And I'm on the ice relatively quickly, I'm on the ice. And as I'm on the ice, I'm lost in my jersey. The linesman's trying to help me out with this size of a head. Getting through any neck hole is a struggle, let alone with a helmet on. So I'm struggling to get out of this. And next thing, when I finally pop up for air, I see him hyping up the crowd as he's going to the box. Crowd's going nuts in Rockford. So then I sit in the box, feel shame. That was probably the one where I'm like, "What? Why did you do that?" The second time I fought him, though, I got suspended for a hit. So who am I to judge others? I got suspended for a hit I laid, and he then said, "Hey, we're fighting." I said, "Okay, fine." That one I knew it was coming, so I prepared a bit better, and I did better in that fight. But the first one, yeah, I wished I didn't do it.
Nice. I love that. And I love that you fought him again, although you kind of like had to per se, but
Yeah.
I always say like I really respect guys that lose fights and then go on to fight that same guy again, because that's something that it's like that's when you kind of know if you got that dog in you or not, you know. I feel like when you lose a fight to a guy, it could really like stun your head, like maybe don't fight that guy again, like
Yeah.
fight another guy type of thing. But when you go for that challenge again, it's like, wow, this guy is kind of a dog, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate it. But yes, that was the kind of mentality before, because I knew I was going to have to fight him. So I played with a guy named Brett Gallant. I
Oh,
played with,
nails.
so we were working on it leading up to it. And he kept trying to get me to fight like him. And I can't do that. So
Well,
he
because
did.
he eats a lot. He just has a good face for it, you know?
But he also does this thing where when him and his brother both do the same thing with their left hand, they'll put their hand basically on the guy's shoulder, like right on the shoulder socket, essentially. And they push so hard that they feel when his shoulder is starting to come back. So then that's why they're able to be such good counterpunchers, because they can feel when it's coming back and they kind of move their head back and throw at the same time. He was trying to get me to do it. I said, dude, there's no way I could do that. Like, there's no way I could do this. So I couldn't. So then we started working on just a few other things, and it helped me quite a bit.
If you practice it, you can. That's the best way to fight. The way they fight in terms, not when they go toe to toe and expose their face, because they do that as well, and they're savages, both of them. But their counter punching is like pound for pound the best. Like that's why they're some of the best fighters in the game to this day, is because their counter punching is unbelievable. Once you nail the flow of the counter punch, like you're elite.
Yeah, like I play with some guy, a few guys that are unbelievable at that. A guy named Jacob Doty, who plays in Ontario.
Yep.
Unbelievable at it.
And you played with Boko Imama as well, who's
Yep.
a nail gun. He's one of my good buddies. And he was like, "Oh, ask him about Bakanji. Ask him about Bakanji." He wanted his limelight on here, but he's also a strategical fighter. And just a real quick snippet, like my first ever day in the queue, I was coming from the USHL and they signed me as a tough guy. And I walk into the locker room and Boko Imama is stretching on the logo, literally on the logo, with just tight shorts on, no shirt, nothing, just a mutant. And I'm like, oh my God, I am not going to be a tough guy in this league if this is what they look like. Thank God he was the only one that looked like that. But
yeah, Boakes has got it and he knows it. Like he looks like he could play any sport, be put in any field and excel. Like he is a specimen physically.
Absolute specimen. But yeah, definitely Doty is a great counter puncher, still doing it to this day.
Yep.
Had a
Gazik
great this year.
Gazik was a big time counter puncher too. I played with Gaz. We're good buddies, and he was a really good counter puncher as well.
And he's not that big too, right? Or is he?
No, Gazik is big. Gazik
like
is
6'3"?
probably about 6'3". Yeah, 6'3".
So he doesn't even really need the counter punch as much as those other guys like the Gallants. I find when you're smaller, it's more effective. It's more beneficial for you.
The guy who wasn't a counter puncher at all, who I play with, who's also a good fighter, was a guy named Patrick Bordelot.
Patrick Bordelot, does he play in the LNAH?
Yep.
Yeah, I played against him this year. I butchered his name last podcast when I said Derek Parker. I said he fought Thomas Bordelot. Thomas Bordelot is a skill player. That's not him. I meant
San Jose,
Bordelot. That guy is a tower of terror, dude.
Buddy. So I play with him in Cleveland. And again, get off topic a bit, but play with him in Cleveland. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet as a teammate. The type of guy who, so he liked the bar scene in Cleveland. And whenever we'd go out, again, I was 2021, not the coolest guy in any team. So if I was ever invited, it's like, what? So I go, and he'd be the one making sure everyone gets in. Meanwhile, it's Cleveland in 2010. He's got this V-neck on that's more of a U-neck, look like it's down to his navel, and he's got these white capris and a fedora on. But he's also 6'8", shredded with a shaved chest. No one's saying a word to this guy, and that's how he's just strutting around the club in Cleveland, Ohio, in 2000. And he was the coolest guy there, like by far the coolest guy there. Everyone knows it. But if you saw him, you're thinking he was way out of place, but just one of the best teammates I've ever had.
Wow, that's crazy. It's on the ice. I mean, you'd think he's the
Oh,
biggest guy ever because I played against him. They had a couple tough guys. I ended up fighting the other guy. They had Chris Cloutier, but him and Cloutier were like the two guys. And we had Derek Parker and myself, and now they have Brett Gallant in Laval. But yeah, it's a gong show over there right now with the amount of toughness they have.
sounds like it.
I want to get back to your career and that the season before you win the Calder Cup, you get traded from Lake Erie to Texas. Talk about that. That was the first time I assume you were traded in your career? And were you shocked? Were you expecting it? You did go to the first place team, so that's a good feeling too.
Yeah, it was the first time. I'd only been in one organization my entire minor hockey career. Only been in one organization in the OHL. So when I got traded, it was a huge shock, but I also kind of saw the writing on the wall. Like it wasn't something that was asked for, and the organization didn't tell me outright, but it kind of saw it coming. Nonetheless, it didn't make it any easier. It was definitely hard. We're actually in Toronto too when the trade happened. We were on the road and we were in Toronto. My now wife, Andrew, and I were out for dinner with one of her friends, and the trade, I was called to be told when it happened. And then I got sent a picture of a tweet from Darren Dreger saying no such thing as a minor trade. And it was, he said, no such thing as a minor trade. Two minor leaguers swapped is what it said. And it was, it was a shock because, like I said, I'd never been traded, only in part of one organization. Loyalty has always been something that was extremely important to me. But then you kind of realize it's not a loyalty thing; it's just a business thing. And going out to Texas, again, the guy I just talked about, Luke Gazik, was on the team. I called him before I'd even spoke to their GM, and just knowing he was there was a huge help. He couldn't have made me feel any more welcome. The whole team was a wonderful group of guys. The coaching staff was amazing. And just getting there and having the culture shock of moving to Texas too, all at the same time, was a lot to deal with at once. But it was it led to probably one of the best times of my and my wife's life.
Nice. And so you joined them the end of the year, fall a little bit short that season. What was the mindset going into the season you guys won it all because you had such a great group of guys finish first place? Was the Calder Cup in your guys' sights?
Was it a lot of returners as well?
We did. Yeah. No, we had a lot of returners that year, and then we had a few new additions that ended up being enormous. Going into that season, again, my first full one with the Dallas organization, my just mentality was I want to leave a mark at training camp and just go from there. And I thought I had a really good training camp. But then that year at training camp, I got a stick to the face. I don't know if you can see underneath my right eye here. I got 26 stitches, and that ended my training camp. So I kind of started the season when I got sent down, not where I wanted to be, because I had a really good first game in Dallas, hoping to stay a bit longer. So when I got down, sometimes when you get sent down and you have higher expectations, you have a bit of a lull where poor me, or I shouldn't be here, or something like that. That wasn't the case in Texas, because when I got there, you saw the talent we had right away, and the coaching staff and the management staff all put in place from the start. Our goal is to win the Calder Cup. Like, we have a good enough team to do this. And right from day one of training camp, we could tell. Like, we had rookies that year. We had a guy named Curtis McKenzie, who's now the captain of Texas. He won Rookie of the Year. We had Travis Morin, who was our first line center, who was the leading scorer and MVP of the regular season, leading scorer and MVP of the postseason. My defense partner for almost the whole year was Jamie Oleksiak, who's now representing Canada at the World Championships.
Northeastern University.
And yeah, exactly. Like, and I could keep going down the list of players we had. And just from the start, we knew we had the team. What is going to get us to the point? Our regular season was amazing. I think the biggest thing for us, we had such a great leadership group that year. We had such a great idea of who we were as a team. We might have had different groups of guys. Like we had a couple younger guys who really liked to experience nightlife in Austin. And when you're in Austin, Texas, you can. But the thing about them was they liked to do that, but they showed up every day. Like it was not a detriment to their performance in the slightest. And the older group was just a group of guys who I'm still close with to this day. We had also, the other part of it was we caught some breaks through the season. We got picked up on waivers, a guy named Dustin Jeffrey. He had been up in Pittsburgh. Dallas picked him up. He played some games there. And then he made it through waivers to come back down to us the second time, which again, adding a player who's NHL caliber was enormous. A guy named Chris Mueller made it through waivers a couple times that year, which was huge. And then a guy who, he's not playing North America anymore, but Patrick Nemeth, he was up that year. And all of a sudden his trajectory from how he progressed, he was seen as a good prospect. And then that year he popped, if you want to call it that, went up to the NHL, found his game there, came back down, was an absolute monster for us in the playoffs. And just all the stars kind of aligned for us that season. No pun intended, being on the Texas Stars, but it led to like a magical season, to be honest with you.
Super cool. What
And
was
the Calder
it?
Cup. Yeah, like winning the Calder Cup. Like, what was that experience like? Parade in Texas, I'm sure it was big. They say everything's bigger there.
It is just for me, the biggest thing was the portion sizes of food was bigger. Like that's the first thing that my mind goes to. But we won it actually in overtime in St. John's, Newfoundland. So we won 3 straight games in overtime to win it. And it was just like every game could have gone either way. But then when we finally won it, again, the guy who I talked about, Patrick Nemeth, I think he had 1 goal all season. Then he scores in 4-on-4, toe drag to a backhand, far side shelf. And we went obviously bananas. And my grandfather got to be at the game too, because he lives in, which is something I want to talk to you about later, Nico. He lives in St. John, or lived in St. John until he passed. And so he was able to come to St. John's, Newfoundland. And to be able to experience that with him was just amazing. And then coming back to Texas, getting to experience it with our families, go through we didn't have a parade per se, but we had a couple different events with the fans. We had all these different things going on. Being able to do it with your teammates was so much fun. And one story about one of the parties we had. So we went out one night, and went out, and and as we were out downtown, one of the guys who's supposed to be taking care of the Calder Cup that night, he had a bit more fun than he needed to that night, so he wasn't doing a great job. So our captain, Max Fortunas, arguably the best captain I've ever had, good friend of mine, he says, "You know what, Gauncer, you drove tonight, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "How about take the Calder home? Like, take it home tonight. Let's see if he realizes that it's gone." So that night when I left, Andrew and I took the Calder home with us. And at the time we were staying in a hotel because it was late June. So we had to move out of our place. So Andrew and I had the Calder Cup in the hotel room for the night. And the next day when we showed up to the rink, no one told the player, he's going to go unnamed right now. No one told the player that we had it. So he thought he lost it. So he went into his team meeting thinking he lost the Calder Cup. So he admitted to the GM that he lost the Calder Cup, and the GM had no idea about it. And so then right afterwards, he came out pretty mad, and our captain said right away, "Hey, don't tell the player, but Gauncer's got it. We're fine." So
That's hilarious.
Holy shit. The boys must have gave that guy a hard time in the group, hey?
Whole morning, the entire morning, everyone was giving it to him. But what'd you do? What'd you do?
So after you have a late run like that and it's the end of June, you have such a short summer before the next season. What does that look like for you? I mean, I'm sure it's more the same, but is it just condensed? What does that short summer look like?
So it makes it hard to be honest with you. It makes it hard because when you're someone like myself who needs a lot of work every summer, like I need as much on ice, as much off ice as I can get because I'm not as gifted as these other guys are. So I need as much of that time as I can get. But at the same time, if you start too soon, you're going to receive diminishing returns because your body needs time. Because during that thing, I got hurt twice during the playoffs, played through it. I had to sit out 2 games, but I was able to play through it. But still, I had a bit of a tear and I needed to take time to heal. So when your break starts July 1, because our last game was like June 20th or something like that. And I didn't get back to Toronto until July like 4th or 5th. So then I want to take a bit of time off, but you can't. So that's when you have to try to play that game of what's rest or what is good rest, what's bad rest. And I really didn't start getting after it until about mid-July because I needed to rehab a bit. And then I didn't get on the ice until start of August. So yes, you've got the like obviously you want to do that every year. But for someone like myself who needs a lot, you kind of go into training camp not behind the eight ball, but not where you want to be. Mentally, you're probably a bit better on the ice because it's not as long of a break. So yes, I'm a bit quicker. My thought process, my timing's a bit better than some other players, but physically I'm not where I have been in the past. So that was a bit hard for me going into that camp, something I had to get over. But yeah, you have to in that instance, in those instances, you need to figure out from jump, what are my priorities? What do I need to get accomplished? And there's no time to waste. Like, is it rest? Okay, well then it has to be productive rest, and
Mhm.
going through it like that.
Right, right. It's a tricky situation, certainly.
I mean,
So
he does it every off season except this one. Usually he's playing till July, late June,
Hmm.
yeah,
so he
Every
knows
year,
all
yeah.
about that.
Exactly.
there's a nice, not really nice, but it's first time where you have like a long summer where you could take 3 weeks and still have 4 solid months of training.
And
Yep.
actually, speaking of summer training, has your summer training been pretty consistent your whole career, or is there some tweaks that you constantly continue to make?
I've had to tweak quite a bit actually. Because when I started out again, 2010, game was so different. For me, it was just get bigger, get stronger, get faster. Well, faster has always been a thing for me. If you've ever seen me skate, something I've always had to work on. But getting bigger, getting stronger, that was always such a big thing at the start of my career. And like for a couple of years, I was around 214, 215, whereas now I'm anywhere between 195 to 200. So I've had to really change how I go about my summers. With that, like I've had very lucky to be in Toronto because there's so many amazing people to work with. I've switched trainers a couple times, all for different reasons. Um, but that's also changed. I've kind of altered depending on where I was in my career and what the biggest priority was that off season. Like for instance, now my big thing is just making myself as efficient a mover as possible. Like I think strength and power has kind of been established at this point. I still make sure to maintain it, but those things have been kind of established, working out for as long as I have. But I always need to improve my efficiency and my movement and making sure I'm as athletic as possible. So that's kind of my main focus now. Whereas before, it was just explosiveness, power, get that into my repertoire.
So you'd say your focus is more on mobility now and just being more of a better overall athlete in order to basically prevent injury,
Yeah.
and the
Mhm.
risk reward that way is higher, I'd say.
Yeah. It's now a lot about just trying to make sure I'm as mobility is a big part of it, but as efficient as possible. Like if I were to isolate a lot of my power and a lot of my movements, they're pretty good, but uh, the sum of my parts isn't quite as great because I always seem to have a little bit of inefficiencies here or there, and I just needing to improve that so the overall product is as good as the individual aspects of it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, I can see that even me, I'm 26 and I've adjusted, I'm doing much more mobility than uh I mean, I'm still doing a ton of strength and power, but I'd say mobility has picked up a lot more. And what about skating? I feel like now guys are just skating way more in the off season. I find it to be so much more beneficial. Now I kind of stay on the ice all off season. And just like it kind of takes away that rust. Is that something that you've added to your off season, like being on the ice a little more? I know back in the day it was kind of stay off.
So again, it's a good thing to bring up, because I think, so I've had this conversation with a few parents who have asked, and a few other players who have asked, and I think it's a different, like a lot of situations, it's very individually dependent. For me, I need to continue to skate. I need to skate a decent amount in the summers, because I need to constantly work and improve on certain things. Like I need, to this day, I'm 34 years old. I still will see a power skater in the summers, because I need to make sure that I'm constantly working on the things I'm not good at, or things I'm sorry. Sports psychologist told me I shouldn't use that terminology. Things, areas I need to develop.
There
Right.
you go.
The areas I need to develop. I need to constantly work on those. Whereas other guys, they need the break because their bodies can't handle it, or mentally they get fatigued. So it's such an individual thing. But for me, I enjoy skating. I'm not someone who gets very lethargic from being at the rink. So I skate probably, I usually ratchet it up. I start by a couple times a week, maybe two times a week to start, and then I ratchet up to about 4 or 5 by early August, which is more than some guys. But I live in Toronto, so not much as some guys. Some guys are 5 days a week starting in May. So
Right.
it's all different, all depending on what you believe, and what I believe is best for me at this stage of my career is to skate more as the season starts to get closer to.
Yeah. No, definitely.
You so go ahead, Nico. What were you gonna say?
Oh, and having a daughter now, right? Has that changed your off-season schedule in terms of what time you're working out, what time you're skating and all that stuff? Because now it's like, what time is she napping so I can do
Mm-hmm.
this, and what time do you need me to take care of her, type of thing?
So that's a good question, because we haven't hit that yet. Because right now I'm just rehabbing from my separated shoulder. I can't skate yet, anyways, so that's not in the equation yet. But right now, for instance, when I've got to be at the rink for a 9:30 treatment and then 10 a.m. workout, um, I'll make sure to have Ruby from whatever time she wakes up that day before her first morning feeding, if you want to call it, whether it be 5:30, 6:37, and kind of make sure that she's settled or somewhat settled to get one feeding in before I leave, so my wife has some time to herself for a bit, because she takes on most of the burden. I don't mean to call Ruby a burden, but the work sometimes can be
Yeah.
seen as a burden.
All right.
She takes on that responsibility. So we work together again. Andrew's been so great with that she understands that this is work. It's not something that I take for granted or that I take lightly. So it's going to be something we're going to have to figure out, especially when the skates come in, like you talked about, because then I'm going to be gone for even longer time. But again, with Andrea here, where I'm not too concerned about it yet.
Awesome. Shout out to Andrea.
You have a great year with Portland, and then it seems you don't crack the NHL with Florida, but then a new door opens up and you sign with Pittsburgh. Where did they come into the equation, and how was that transition? Third team in 3 years.
Yeah. So again, as someone who didn't change organizations growing up, I've done quite a bit of it pro hockey. But that summer, again, similar type of thing. Portland, they had just sold to Springfield.
Okay.
So then Florida's team was going to be in Springfield. And just because the organization had so much turbulence at the time, I just didn't feel like it was a place I wanted to. I didn't think it was right for me, I should say. So I felt, you know what, I'm going to be free agent again. And that summer, Pittsburgh pursued pretty hard. I played against Wilkes-Barre a couple times the season before, because when I was in Portland. So they were pretty keen on getting me signed there. And in speaking with some of the people they had, it just seemed like the best fit. And I'm glad I did, because it was an amazing year and an extremely, extremely well-run organization to be a part of.
And
Very
you
cool.
played a couple games up there with the big dogs. I mean, can you talk about that experience? I mean, that's the prime time. Pens right there.
Hmm.
I mean, Sid, Gino. I mean, Kessel was really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
So
I got so that year again, when you look at the stat pack, it's quite different from the year before. I went back to having I don't even know, like 13 points that year or something like that in the AHL, and I had to play a different role on that team. Back to the role where it's more of a defensive minded attitude, um, lean on that toughness a bit more. And when I got called up, it was the same thing, and that was kind of the role they had me playing. But from about February on, I was up with Pittsburgh almost entirely, down a little bit, but almost entirely. And it was really like a dream come true, to be honest with you. Getting to play the outdoor game, getting to play with guys like Crosby, practice with guys like Crosby and with Malkin, Fleury, Tang, Kessel, like all these guys on a day-to-day basis. It was something that I, again, never took for granted. It was unbelievable. And being able to spend the playoffs with them as well. Because again, didn't play a game, but warmed up a couple. Thought I was getting in a couple, warmed up a couple. Being able to be part of that run was just something that, again, dream type stuff. And the fact that Andrew was with me through it, my parents got to come watch the outdoor game. All this stuff is stuff I'll be able to remember for a lifetime.
Hmm.
dude, I get goosebumps thinking like, man,
Mm-hmm.
that's the team too. Like, is there anything that you obviously everything is so impressive about those guys, but is there any one thing that you were just like, wow, like that's why like this makes sense why these guys are where they're at? Like, is there any one thing that you can think of, or is it just a combination?
I think it's a combination, but if I could pinpoint one of the many would be how hard they practiced. I like again in the NHL, there's not a ton of practice time because it's game every other day. But when we did have the opportunity to practice, there'd be some tension in practice because of how hard guys worked, how much each of them wanted to be the best at every rep, whether it was Flurry playing every single rebound, even if it was a shooting drill and other guys are coming in, he's playing every rebound until the guy goes back to line. Whether it's power play, penalty kill, guys getting mad at each other because that's not what you're doing in games. That's not our read. I know your reads. That's not what it is. Accepting passes, making sure that guys were doing the right, like just everything about practice. Especially someone like me, because for me, when you're a bubble guy, you need to be on every day because that bad practice could be the reason you're sent down. So every day I'm doing my mental warm ups before practice, going through what my intention is for practice, all this stuff and I needed to, especially on this team where they took every day so serious. So I think that was one of the many things that I took away from that year.
Yeah, it's almost like it seems like they all were acting like they were bubble guys.
Oh,
You
so some of them have that mentality. Some of them have the again, I won't name names, but a couple of players on the team have this chip on their shoulder and they treat everyone like you're trying to take their job from them and like screw you, I'm doing that. Like even though they're very well established players, you think that they there's some days you'd hope like, oh, this guy's going to be so nice to me. This like there's some days like, no, this guy is thinking you're taking food off his plate. And again,
yeah.
I respect the heck out of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's, I mean, that's what the best, that mind, like that killer mindset,
Mhm.
killer mindset.
So you have a stop in Pittsburgh, and then you sign with Columbus and play with the Cleveland Monsters, not the Lake Erie Monsters. So you went back to them. What was that like? Was because you signed with Columbus, how did that door open up
And you
back?
were
That was
playing with LeBron James there.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's why he came back actually.
Yeah.
Um, the so that's where I was hoping to be back with Pittsburgh, and we thought we could work something out. Unfortunately, something didn't get worked out. So then once that happened, I had to pivot, and Columbus was the team that was showing the most interest. And going back to Cleveland, my wife and I loved Cleveland. Um, so that was definitely not uh, something we dragged our lip about in the slightest.
Mhm.
That season was hard though, because we were a very bad team. Finished second last. It was a battle from start to finish. That was a season to really test how much you loved hockey, how much you loved coming to the rink. Because because it was a year that coming to the rink knowing you're in for a dogfight every single night, and knowing that you're probably starting behind the eight ball was hard. But again, it just sharpens you, makes you mentally tougher, and it makes you appreciate the good days that much more.
Yes, it does. Because then you sign with Tampa Bay Lightning and have a great
Those
season
are, those are the
in the
good days.
Yeah.
46 points, dude. Even if you were a forward, I'd be like, that's a fantastic year. Oh,
10
Thank you, man.
goals, 36 assists, 46 points in 59 games, and obviously a plus 24 in your first year with the Tampa Bay organization in 2 NHL games. Talk about that year. And I see you were clearly back on the power play.
Yes. Very well done
imagine
on
he
your part. Yeah.
wasn't. Imagine he wasn't.
Those are all even strength
He's like,
points.
actually, no, I got no power play time.
None. They screwed me. No, no, no. I was so right from the start there. The Tampa Bay organization puts everyone, doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, um, they put everyone in the best position to succeed they possibly can. They figure out, okay, what does this guy need? How can we make sure he's going to maximize his potential? And in turn, maximize how much he's going to help our organization, help the Tampa Bay Lightning win a Stanley Cup. And because they do such a good job with that, I felt from day one, and this was based upon a question you asked earlier, Nico. How do you make yourself feel relevant? They made everyone feel relevant when you're in that organization. From day one, you know that if you're signed there, you mean something. And just feeling that from the start, also the added benefit of having the captain of Tampa Bay introduce me to everyone because it's Steven,
Yeah.
a guy who I grew up with.
Yeah.
He's the one introducing me to everyone at camp. All of a sudden, everyone's going to be a lot nicer to the captain's friend. So from day one, it was such a great experience. And going down to Syracuse, I didn't start on the power play. They had a couple other guys that were there, but then one of them, Chernak, who was my defense partner at the start, got called up after a few games because he had that, like I talked about with Nemeth earlier, that pop, and it happened immediately. All of a sudden, I started getting power play time. We started clicking. We had a really good season and got up to Tampa Bay again. Had a really good season there too. That was the year I was with them. We got swept in the first round by Columbus, but nonetheless, it was from day one. They saw my worth. I understood that they saw that, and it was a wonderful relationship to be able to work with an organization that wanted me to reach my potential. And I felt like during those seasons, I was playing some of the best hockey I'd ever played.
Very cool. And then you go back for a second year and it gets halted from COVID, stops from COVID. There was a few months of uncertainty because the bubble started in August and I believe
Mm-hmm.
it stopped in February or March, the season. What did those 5 months look like from March to the bubble? And were they talking to you, telling you you're going to be with the team? This is what we see. Or was it like another training camp before the bubble with a chance to make the team that goes in?
They had to
So
have invited you. You were over a point per game in the National League that year.
yeah, so I that was I played well with some fortuitous bounces, but
Take
so
them.
that exactly 100%. That year, so I was March 12th, I believe, is when the shutdown happened.
Yeah.
March 11th, we played a game in Rochester, and after the game, I was told, "Hey, you're getting called up tomorrow." So awesome. So then everything happens the next day, and I don't get called up. So then, as the PA rep, I have to then sort everything out for the next few weeks, talking to guys, figuring out what's happening next. Once we finally do get back to our home cities, everything, like you said, is halted. So after a couple of weeks of just training on my own, I got a call from the GM of Tampa, and he said, "Hey, like, there's the new rule that has been put in place. If you live in an NHL city, you're allowed to train at that facility. They will allow you to train at that facility, but I would need to call and ask, do you want to train with the Leafs?" So I said, 100% I do. I would love to. So then in a couple weeks when they opened that up, I then skated with a few Leaf players for 2 weeks. And then after that 2 weeks, I got a call from the Tampa Bay GM saying, I want to let you know, be upright and honest with you, upfront and honest with you, pardon me. We're going to set out our roster for camp, and everyone is now healthy. So we're not going to be bringing, you're not going to be bringing you to camp. The only extra defenseman coming to camp is going to be Cal Foote. He was their first round pick, and that had them with 10 defensemen. So I said, listen, I understand, but can you call Toronto and tell them I'm not coming back? I don't want to go back into the rink knowing that like I'm not skating. So then that's when I was then told you're not coming to be part of the camp and moving forward. So that I wasn't with the group after that point. But up until that point, I thought I was going to be. So I was training like I was getting ready for training camp and starting up again.
Mm.
And
And
like, what was that? You were in the bubble or no?
no, I was not in the bubble. I did not get invited to training camp before, and then after that, that's when they then took, I think, most of the guys from training camp, not all of them, to the bubble.
Oh, so you stayed in
Mhm.
Toronto for that COVID, uh,
Yes.
which is probably I mean, you said you had access to some ice with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but Toronto was probably one of the worst places to be during COVID in terms of, I mean, you can do
Shutdowns,
anything.
Oh my
shutdowns,
gosh.
everything.
Well, there was a
Just
few
Canada.
loopholes for professional athletes, but one of them was you had to skate like after a certain time. So there was a few weeks where we were skating. We were skating at like 11 o'clock at night starting, and then we were playing. We are going pretty hard, so I wouldn't be getting home till like 1, not cooling down till like 2:30. Then workouts the next day at like 9, 10 a.m. Because again, we only had certain allotted times we were allowed to do things, and it was, yeah, again, obviously there's people in must-work situations. I can understand that, but for a professional athlete, it wasn't the optimal situation. I'll put it that way.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, and then to Hermosa Beach, straight to
Yeah.
Hermosa Beach. I mean, I don't know if you were on the team. You must have been, but I went to go visit Boko. I think it was that first year you were in Ontario. I watched a couple games. I was there for a rookie party at a Mexican restaurant. At
Okay.
were you there at the
Trying to
Mexican
think.
restaurant? I don't. It was right there where all the boys lived, and
No,
the
I know which
goalie.
Mexican restaurant. I'm trying to remember what year would it have been.
Yeah, I think it was that I think it was 2020, 2021. It was either
Okay.
2020, 2021 or the next one, but it was one of
Okay.
those that you were there. And I remember the goalie
Okay.
was Cal Peterson. What's his name?
Yeah, yeah, Cal Peterson.
Yeah, he was the goalie, and yeah, and so I went to go visit him, and holy, what a spot. I mean, unfortunately, those guys living in Hermosa Beach, I don't know if you did as well, had to drive that hour to the game, or
Hmm.
when I went over to watch it, it was more like an hour and a half to get to the game arena. But what a setup there, like right on the beach. So beautiful. I mean, I'm guessing that's why you decided to stay for a couple of years.
Yeah, it was your days off are unmatched. Like when you're living in playing in the LA organization, and even when you're playing for the AHL team, and you're there, your days off are unmatched. Like you've got the beach right there. You've got LA at your disposal on a much lesser budget than some of the other people living in LA, but nonetheless,
Of course.
you're living there, and it's just amazing. Like yes, the game day travel isn't optimal, being having to drive an hour and then rush hour traffic takes about 2.5 to get to games for families. But living there was something that we'll never forget. Like we took advantage of it. Our last year, we lived right on the water, doing everything we could to get outside, and it was awesome.
The bike path there, you guys had bikes, you go on that little bike path, all the beautiful houses, the beach on
Hmm.
one side. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable, man.
you definitely saw how the other half lived when you're living in that area. Like
Yeah,
because
it's right.
the
Yeah,
thing was you're driving by these like $20 million homes, and you're thinking like that's not even their first house. Like that's not even their primary residence.
yeah,
This
there's
just sits
nobody
empty
there.
for most of the year, and this is just their beach house.
Yeah, the only thing that would suck about Hermosa Beach is I remember Boaks had a one-bedroom apartment, and it was expensive for rent. I mean, that place is no joke in terms of paying rent for sure.
Okay, you're not taking home much at the end of the year.
No, but you're living great. You're living a beautiful
Exactly.
life.
Yeah.
A beautiful life. And how was the hockey there, like playing for Ontario? What'd you think?
It was fun. It was a new experience. Again, that was a team where my first and second year we were so young. Like we probably had 9 to 10 first or second year players my first year that were first or second round picks. So you knew what the organization's mandate was, and that's develop. Let's play these young guys, develop, and clearly it's worked. Like you look at the team right now. Quentin Byfield's on their first line now. Jordan Spence is playing for them on a regular basis. Arthur Kalia, like all these guys that played with us are playing in the NHL for the Kings. But it was definitely a different experience when I first got there because we were so young. Like you go from Syracuse, where the mandate is we're winning. Like Cal Foote, for instance, was the first round pick. He's going to sit a bit when he when he needs to, because what's best is they believe winning was first and then development. Ontario's changed a bit over the last couple of years as these guys have gotten older, more of a mindset of winning. But that first year it was develop, and it was different. But it was again a learning experience and something that I will take with me moving forward. And again, I had a great time. I don't want to make it sound like it wasn't fun. I still got to play a ton, so I loved it.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
you kind of adapted your role there, like you mentioned, probably to a little bit of like a mentor, like helping these kids, kind of adjust to the pro game.
Yeah, like my first year, I was playing with my defense partner the whole year was Sean Dursey. Then the next year it was Jordan Spence. So again, it alters from year to year what my role was clear. Being paired with those two
Yeah.
was help on the defensive side of things, and then just give them the puck.
Yeah, you're welcome, Dursey and Spence, because they're having good careers. You're welcome, guys.
I think that needs to be a mindset adopted by GMs. Winning should be first because winning is developing. Like I understand you want to play your young guys and you want them to get all these minutes and all these situations, but if you don't win, you're just playing them and they're learning how to lose. Like put them in positions where you teach them and you make it clear that the goal is to win. They're going to figure out what they need to do to help the team win. That will force them to develop. So
Teach them to be winners, baby.
that's it, man.
Yep.
Fill the room with winners.
And then you go to Toronto. So my first question is, I mean, you mentioned his game travels well, but like, what was it like to have Z every day in the locker room? You mentioned his intensity. I lived with him last offseason. I mean, I've known this guy since we were little kids, and we've played together our whole lives and against each other. And last summer, we probably had like 3 fights on ice, place training.
Yeah,
3 or 4.
maybe, and then maybe a couple broken sticks, maybe
Couple broken sticks,
couple silent car rides. Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had one of those. We had one of those this year, actually. Zach likes to talk during practice too.
Oh,
And
Nico knows all about it.
even if a rep doesn't go his way, it should have. And the other guys got lucky. So if he comes down on a 3-on-2 and they don't get a shot off, he still has the gall to say, "Oh, if they're going to leave that much space open for us, we'll take that every day. I could drive a bus through that gap." Meanwhile, no shot was had. We broke up the play, and I hear this. So all year I've been letting it go. Near the other year, I heard this one more time, and I was playing with a defense partner, and I wanted him to add a bit of jam, if you will, to his game. So I went over to Zach and I said, "Well, you guys didn't even get a shot." And then all of a sudden, we start getting into it, and then everyone notices this.
Yeah.
So then other guys are bringing it up, like, "Hey, Gauncer, what's going on with Souls? I can't believe he was acting like that on the ice." So then we start telling it more and just stirring the pot. But yes, it happened with us as well.
But
those are the best, man.
the energy every day though, hey, it's
Oh, it's great.
unbelievable. Just like all day, every day at the rink, 6 a.m. And was he rocking the dad shoes?
See, I'm not ever going to comment on someone else's fashion because I've had dad fashion my whole life. So I have
He's got
no
the
idea.
dad fashion going. I'm taking tips from Cam, dude. I'm telling
Buddy, everything. I'm like the shirt I'm wearing right now is a Markham minor hockey shirt. The Markham Waxers minor hockey shirt that I was given a couple years ago. If my shirt wasn't purchased by my wife, my mother-in-law, or given to me by some sort of hockey organization, there's a good chance I don't own it.
That is the dad closet right there.
Yeah.
Verbatim.
I've got a question. Nico, are you done about Toronto or?
Yeah.
I've got a question. You mentioned it earlier, about a sports psychologist. How valuable is a sports psychologist, and why should a young player seek out a sports psychologist?
So for sports psychologist for me has been invaluable. I've worked with a few different ones. One was an independent. The others were people who work for organizations. And personally, I don't think they should start too young. I think every young athlete should understand what their mental makeup is before going to someone else, so they can understand where their strengths and areas of development are. Because if you go to someone too early, they might try to mold you into something that you're not.
Mhm.
They might try to tell you, listen, this is what's worked for all of my clients, and this is what I think you should be doing. But if that's not you and you don't understand who you are as a person quite yet, it might have, as I used this term earlier, diminishing returns. So I do think it's something that's important for people to use, but not until you understand who you are as a competitor and who you are as a person. But once you do, I think it's great. The brain is a muscle like everything else in your body, and you're going to train those. So you should train that. Figure out what's going to work for you. Figure out what methods they might have, but also understanding it helps you understand yourself. It helps you understand your off the ice relationships as well, how you view things. Like that's something for me. I kind of viewed for too long. I viewed everything as a win or loss. Like on the ice, off the ice, it was a win or a loss, and I had to understand that once you leave the ice or once you leave the facility, not everything is winning and losing. You need to understand there's other aspects to life, um, and it's something that I think has greatly benefited my life. My life, pardon me, has greatly benefited from working with sports psychologists, both on and off the ice.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Absolutely.
I gotta get on that, honestly. I gotta get on that.
Mhm.
Is there before we wrap this up, like I'm sure you've been playing for so long, you're a routine guy. Is there, you mentioned sports psychology, you mentioned you work more on mobility now, but is there something that you've added to your routine or your daily habit that you think has just significantly elevated your game or life? Like is there something that you do every day or almost every day that you think like, wow, thank God I added this? Or is there not one specific thing?
Well, like, I think it'd be stretching. I'm tight as a guitar string, so I started doing a lot more stretching. Like nightly, I'll put in like 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the day. Whether it's running myself through a small thing or just static stretching, which I know some trainers don't believe is the best thing, but nonetheless, it's still relatively effective. I started doing that probably 10 years ago, and it's now just become a habit. And even if I think it's helped my on ice performance, but even if it hasn't, it's helped my overall health. Just feeling like I'm a bit more mobile. My posture right now it's terrible. I'm glad. I'm hoping this isn't going to be put out as a video because my posture is atrocious right now. But aside from that, it's something I feel like has helped me on a day-to-day basis as well. And again, all of us have 10 to 20 minutes every day where we're doing nothing, whether it's television, whether it's gaming, and just putting yourself into stretching positions, understanding different maneuvers you can do to help your body. And I think that was something that I've added, and it's been hugely beneficial.
Yeah, that's a great one. I do
Hmm.
the same. I got the same one. I got the same one. Night stretches. Love them.
Yep.
Love it.
Yep.
Makes you feel like a pro though, too. It just keeps you in that pro, like before bed. You're like, I'm doing something as a
Even,
pro to help my
yeah,
game.
even if you don't play hockey, you should
Mm.
still stretch before bed. Like you
Yep.
should still stretch before bed, just so you wake up in the morning and like you feel good. Like you
Yeah,
don't
and
want
it's
to
been
wake
said,
up.
and it's been said that if you stretch before bed, you're able to get yourself into a more comfortable position sleeping. Because sometimes when people are trying to figure out why can't I sleep, my mind's racing. It's also because your physiological aspect, the physiological part of you, isn't in the position it needs to be in because you're not comfortable. But if you're able to stretch a bit beforehand, loosen yourself up, you're able to get into that spot and maybe fall asleep a bit quicker.
Facts. Facts.
Dude, seems like you did go to Harvard. I gotta double check this.
No, I'm just a know-it-all. I'm just a know-it-all. I'm not as smart as I act.
I love that. And last one, actually, you said you mentioned you're taking courses. Like, you're studying to what are you studying?
Just to get a degree. So when I was playing in the OHL, I was going to the University of Toronto, and then once I turned pro, because I'm this is how old I am, they didn't offer correspondence courses online unless you could be present for all exams. So I couldn't. So I moved over to Athabasca University. I've been taking courses ever since. Just honestly, just looking to graduate. I don't really have. I'm just going to get a Bachelor of Arts, Math and Science,
Yeah.
and just kind of go from there. Just want to set myself up and try to keep as many doors open as possible.
Just keep that promise to mom, eh?
That too.
Yeah. Love it, man.
Hey,
Z,
Cam, before we end this, I'm gonna rattle off a list of questions and you're
Okay,
gonna answer them on the fly. Okay, I got
gotcha.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions. All
Done.
right. Don't think about it, just right to your mind. Favorite place you lived?
Austin.
Favorite arena you played in?
Oh, Heinz Field, the outdoor game.
Oh, wow. Least favorite arena?
Oof. Okay, don't think. I can't remember the name of the one in the B. Is it called BMO Arena? The one in Rockford where I got beat up.
Yes, BMO. Yeah, the BMO Harris Bank Arena.
Yes.
Um, Funniest teammate you played with?
I think because of his practical jokes, Max Fortunas.
Favorite uniform you wore?
Toronto Marley.
Yes, sir. And last but not least, your favorite food restaurant?
Oh, place called Jesse's. It's in
Jesse.
Mississauga.
Yeah.
It's a Mediterranean Greek place, and I've been going to it since I was in junior hockey, and it is my favorite place to go.
What's your
Very
meal?
good.
What's your go-to meal there?
Oh, it's called a chicken plate. It's all of the plate. It's got like the Greek salad, it's got the rice, mound of chicken, their homemade tzatziki, and some of their homemade dressing, and it is unbelievable.
Love tzatziki. Love
Wow.
it.
Yeah,
Great answers. Thank you so much for coming on. You've had an amazing career and still to be had. What's next?
wait and see. Again, hoping to be back with the Marlies, but if not, we're still gonna continue to play next season, and just look forward to whatever it comes.
Awesome. Awesome, Cam. Well, you better take a step back and look at your career and make sure that you understand what you've done and to be proud of that because man, when I was doing my research on you, I'm like, this guy has had an amazing career so far and
Thank you.
excited to follow and see where it goes. And hopefully we're teammates again next year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks very much. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, keep stretching, brother.
Thanks, buddy. See you,
Take
man.
care.